welcome back to my channel, Dark and Creepy. All stories are written and narrated by me, MC Allen.
The psychology involved with the human brain is extraordinary. Too bad I've lost mine. You may wonder why I say that, because I'm not your typical madman. As you can tell, I can write coherent sentences and the walls of my house aren't scraped or bloodied with some encrypted message that only I can understand. No. My psychology is fine for the most part, except for 1 week a year where it's lost. I truly don't know where I go, or what I become. I'll explain in more detail of when I first started having these weak disappearances, which began after I went on a lone backpacking trip because I'm an introvert and enjoy seeing nature uninterrupted. I'm not going to say exactly where I was, but I will say it had a good amount of lakes and streams. First off, the small country town I had to pass through before the mountains was interesting, to say the least. They had signs before you entered the town that read, "No loud music of any kind." I joked to myself, thinking that everyone there looked so old that they probably wouldn't even be able to hear it, and I was a year out of college and still immature at this point, so I ignored it and kept my music playing because I didn't think it was obnoxiously loud. Though, when I stopped at a red light, I heard an aggressive knocking on my window, and I looked over to see an old man tapping his cane and gesturing for me to roll down the window. I did right after turning off the radio. The man's eyes stared me down before he said, "Didn't you read the damn sign before town? You're scaring the folks around here." My music wasn't that loud, was it? I asked while noticing the light turn green, but the man was leaning against the side of my car, so I couldn't leave. "If you want to listen to those tunes, then do it so only you can hear them. Folks around here get squeamish with those sounds." "Sorry, sir, I'll keep them off until I get out of town, but the light is green, so I gotta go." "If you're heading up to those mountains over yonder, it'd be best for your sake to keep it off," the man said before letting go of my car and shuffling back to the sidewalk with his wooden cane clenched tightly in his hand. Wondering why these people are so weird about music, I continued on my way. It wasn't until a few days into the backpacking trip that I remembered what the guy told me. It was while I was taking a break after going 3 miles that day on a twisting path. I needed some motivation to keep me going because my calves were still hurting from the hills, so I pulled out my phone, which had less than half a battery left, and put on some song by AC/DC I had downloaded already. I didn't have headphones, so I just let it play while sitting beside the trail, remembering the weird town that didn't like music. Listening to the song more in depth, I couldn't understand how. I could maybe understanding disliking some types of music, but to say that you hate them all is just insane. However, while I listened to the song, I heard a part I didn't recognize. It sounded like a piano and didn't really match the tune of the song, and I wondered if this download was some sort of remix. But when I checked it, it showed that it was the original song. So I paused the song, but the piano music still played a soft tune that echoed from off the trail, and I turned my head to see where it was coming from, as it sounded like church music. I wondered if it was coming from another backpacker, but my backpacking bag made it difficult for me to look around, so I unstrapped and took it off. Standing, I could now better hear the soft, angelic-like music, and feeling as though I lost control of my legs, I started following it. For a moment, I thought I had died and was going to heaven, as I tracked farther away from the path. However, the once soft music shifted into something off-key and eerie, like whoever was playing before was now having a stroke, and I fell out of the trance to see that I had no idea where I was. The music, if you could still call it that, didn't stop, but grew louder simultaneously while I desperately tried to head back to the trail. Soon the music became faint, and so I thought I was heading in the right direction, until I passed a tree and saw it. The sound stopped almost immediately, and before me was a simple wooden piano, but the keys were the most distinct part of it, with them being white as pearls, and the others darker than a black hole. Now that I was face to face with it, I had a million of questions on how or why this was put here. But most importantly, who was playing it just barely. I was hundreds of miles away from any civilization, and yet this piano looked well taken care of. Clenching my fist before walking over to it, I felt the world stop. To this day, I still remember the resounding silence, because no bird chirped, while the wind and distant streams seemed to shut off with the flip of a switch. It felt off-putting, and my guts twisted inside of me like maggots squirming in a dead, warm bird. Taking my right hand, I touched one of the keys and slowly applied enough pressure until a note rang out. It was untuned and short, but my hand started to tremble, and I saw a drop of blood land on the white and black keys below. Gazing at the bright red drop, I felt my body go limp, while my view turned blurry. Now this is the part that scared me the most, because I can remember this scene so vividly in my mind, but nothing else until waking up in my bed at home, perfectly clean, as if nothing had happened. Originally, I thought it was a dream, as all people would, up until I checked my phone that was filled with missed texts and voice messages. Most of them were from family. One of my friends, who I'll refer to as Jack, was the first one I clicked on, which read as follows. "Have you made it out of the canyon yet? Or do you still not have service? Because we're waiting here at the trail marker next to the parking lot where you had told us to pick you up at." The next one after that said, "Dude, it's getting dark. So please respond if you got service, or else we're going to call search and rescue because you should already be here and we're all getting worried." So I then looked at my missed phone calls, where there were more than 50. At that moment, my brain throbbed as none of this made any sense to me. My heart soon stopped when I saw that these messages were from a week ago. It's as if I had stopped existing for a whole damn week of my life, because I had no memory of it. I wonder if I was going insane at the time, and still do to this day. So in that next moment, I called Jack up, and he acted the same way I did, with the main question being, how? How was I able to get back home in a completely different state without getting a ride or taking a bus, because nothing had been charged to my bank account for this entire week, which I found out later when I tried to figure out where I could have been in this week by tracking my spending. Long story short, Search and Rescue called off the search for me, and were confused but mostly mad because it seemed like a bunch of young adults playing a prank on them by reporting a false missing person report. But I was really missing, and the place where I was unknown even to me. I told my parents and family, who were all worried sick, and none of them believed my story about the piano, blacking out, and waking up nice and comfy in my bed. They all thought I was doing something shady, and my mom especially asked if I was part of a gang or doing drugs, and I made up this whole story just to cover it up. Now, to make it clear, I'm in my late 20s, so I'm not a kid, but you know how parents get when they think you're lying to them. They always jump to the most drastic and out there conclusions. So that all happened, and my boss from work was just glad to see that I was okay, but she quickly turned mad, thinking that I might have faked the whole thing. She didn't fire me on the spot because she liked my work ethic, but just gave me a warning to never pull anything like that again. At the time, I promised that I wouldn't, but that ended up being a lie in of itself. After that whole incident, everyone I knew acted like I was a little insane, but as I went on living my life, they all forgot about it eventually. I didn't, however, as I spent most of my free time trying to figure out clues. I already mentioned the one where I checked my bank account to see if I had bought anything anywhere, but that showed nothing. And so I searched to see if anyone else had similar experiences online, and that just made me feel weird, as all of the experiences similar to mine thought it could have been aliens who had abducted them, and they would wake up days later in a cornfield or something. Either way, none of the stories I found mentioned a wooden piano, and none of them woke up in their own bed with all of their stuff put exactly where it belongs. I don't care how intelligent aliens could be, but they're not smart enough to know precisely where I put my stuff because I'm a perfectionist and like things to be put in a particular way. The only person that could have put all my stuff back in the manner they were had to be me, or at least something that thinks like me. I also thought back to the town that didn't like music, but brushed it off as a coincidence at this time. A few months later, I had to stop searching for answers because it just made me feel insane, as it took me down a rabbit hole of conspiracy theories. Nothing weird happened afterwards, so I thought it was just some bump in my memory because there is no possible way to explain what happened. I think the main thing that I thought involved an alien abduction, but that one didn't linger too long because I wasn't about to go around telling people I got abducted by aliens, and that's why I disappeared for a week. That was until a year later at the same time since I went missing on the backpacking trip. It was exactly 1 year. Keep this in mind because it's important. I disappeared for another week again, and I wasn't even in the woods but on a blind date with someone Jack set me up with. Looking back, I felt bad for her because I remember meeting and sharing a table near the edge of the restaurant, right next to a window that you could see the sides of mountains poking out from the city which sat below. The place was one of the fancier restaurants in my city, so I made sure to get a good view. Anyway, we were laughing and sharing some funny memories about Jack because he was the only person that both of us knew, and so it grounded us. We were having a great time and laughing from what I remember until I was taking a sip of my water when a drop of blood dripped from my nose into it. It wasn't a light one, as I quickly set my drink down with more thick droplets of blood dripping onto my white napkin placed on my lap. I then stood up, holding my nose while saying something along the lines of, "It must be extra dry this year." She laughed awkwardly, trying to fill the gap of time while I made my way to the bathroom with the door shutting behind me. This was all I remember of the event, because I saw the world turn black and white. I couldn't see any color at all, but I could see the now black droplets of blood dripping from my face in the bathroom mirror. I wondered if I was having a stroke as the black and white world started to ripple while my head felt like someone was pounding on my ears with metal pans. My heart jumped when I heard the faint, off-key piano music playing, which slowly grew louder until my senses felt like bursting. All of this turned to nothing as I blacked out again. The next thing I remember was waking up in my bed, perfectly clean. No sign that could prove anything of what happened. I hoped it was a dream, but in the back of my head, I knew it probably wasn't. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, and I didn't want to look at it, knowing that I would have to do damage control again if indeed the same thing had happened like before. So, hesitantly, I glanced at the screen that was filled with missed messages and phone calls. My heart sunk, and what little hope I had that somehow this didn't happen again vanished. I first listened to one of the voicemails Jack left me in which he said something like, "How could you just walk out on the date? You made her wait there for more than half an hour until she asked one of the waiters, who said they saw you walk out the front door. You need to call me right away, and better have a damn good reason why you would do something like that." The next one I looked at was from my work, and I thought for sure I was fired at the time, but the message left was that I needed to speak to them about my future with the company, and all that jazz. I thought for sure I was good as gone, but luckily, later they let me stay. But I lost my end-of-year bonus among other privileges as they cut back my lunchtime from an hour to 45 minutes, so I could make up for the time I missed. There was so much I had to fix with everyone that I was going through a mental breakdown. I was at an all-time low in my life, and never wanted anything more in the world than to know what happened or where I was during that week. Little did I know that figuring out what happened would make my life a living hell. I'll spare you the time of retelling the 1 week of each year I went missing, because this has been happening in my life for about 19 years now. I've gotten to the point that it's systematic, and that I tell everyone ahead of time I'm going on vacation for this week, all alone so no one wonders where I am. It sucks to lose those vacation days from work, but you do what you gotta do in this case. I had the system down in about the 4th year I disappeared, and when I came back I looked at my phone, and all of the messages were filled with, "How was your vacation?" and not, Where have you been? It was so nice not having to do damage control, and I stopped wasting my time to stop it because it didn't affect my life in drastic ways anymore. I just saw it as a little hibernation, and life was good again until the 6th year. It started out normal, or what I consider normal, with the bloody nose and blurred vision, until I blacked out, expecting to wake up nice and clean in my bed. That didn't happen, but instead, I woke up to hearing brutal, high-pitched screaming, the types of screaming you would imagine hearing while gently being lowered into hell. They got louder and clearer every passing second. My eyes were still blurry, but were adjusting until I could see this inhumanly long, pale arm in front of me that reflected the moon's light. It seemed to be climbing a sheer, rocky cliffside with these disturbing fingers that crawled up the rocks, similar to the way a daddy long leg would. I desperately tried to move my limbs, but nothing budged. The only thing I could control was where my eyes were, and you could imagine how much I was freaking out. The constant screaming turned to tear-filled crying, and I wondered if it was coming from me. Until I saw the light brown hair of a young boy that was trying to pry himself free from the other pale arm's grasp that clung to the boy's body. Again, I tried to move and wondered where I actually was and if this pale monster had grabbed me like the boy. Soon, the boy's head looked up to meet my gaze, and his eyes were a watery red with tears dripping past his freckles. I heard him scream, "Mama, Dad, please help me. Please, let me go." The boy's eyes were staring directly into mine when he asked to be let go, as if I was the one who stole him. Then, reality hit me hard at that moment. These pale, inhumanly long arms were mine. I looked into the boy's terrified eyes and tried to speak to him, but I couldn't utter a word. The boy's face still scars me to this day. It wasn't much longer until I blacked out again, to wake up nice and clean in my bed, as if nothing had happened. But I knew that that was not the case. Something horrible happened. And still happens, and I can't deny it.